Hello, and welcome to a slightly better life.
Welcome back. If you listened to my first episode, you know I'm a big believer in micro habits, making the starting point of a task or project or goal so small that your brain has almost no reason to resist it. In that episode, I shared how walking for just 1 minute in my backyard, in my sweatpants, in my slippers, and no bra, yes, you heard it, no bra, helped me build a consistent walking habit. Today, I want to share another example because this one might be even more relatable. Have you ever looked at a task that felt so big and overwhelming that you did nothing? Not because you were lazy, and not because you didn't care, and not because you didn't want to. You simply couldn't figure out where to begin. That was me after I moved into my first home. I moved in 1 month before I was scheduled to have a surgery that would limit my mobility for several months. So I focused on setting up only the rooms I would need during recovery: the living room, the kitchen, bedroom, and my bathroom. The other three bedrooms and bathrooms were left mostly untouched and filled with boxes. So many boxes. After surgery and rehab, I kept telling myself, I really need to finish unpacking. But every time I thought about it, all I could see was the size of the project. I didn't know where to start. I still had physical limitations. And if I'm being honest, I did sometimes use those limitations as an excuse. So I did nothing. And days became weeks, weeks became months, and I am so embarrassed to actually say this out loud. But those months eventually became 7 years. Yep, you heard it, 7 years. Not 7 days, not 7 weeks, not 7 months, but 7 years. Now, in fairness, I did have another surgery during that time, which did set me back again. But if I'm telling the truth, parts of my home still looked as though I had just moved in because I just couldn't start. Now, the boxes were beautifully stacked and they were meticulously labeled, but they were still boxes in three bedrooms. Seeing them and passing by the bedrooms and knowing that they were there drained me both mentally and emotionally. The unfinished task was always sitting in the back of my mind, creating stress and clutter, even when I wasn't in those rooms. Now, the rest of my house was organized. I am someone who likes everything to have a place with labels, and I don't like clutter. So the rest of the house looked beautiful. But behind those bedroom doors were stacks of boxes I had avoided for 7 years. Now, maybe your version isn't unpacking, maybe it's organizing the garage or cleaning out a closet. Sometimes a goal becomes so large in our minds that we just freeze, we become paralyzed. Then one day, I remembered the lesson I had talked about in my first podcast that had already changed another part of my life. Don't focus on finishing, focus on starting. So I asked myself, what is the smallest version of unpacking I could actually commit to? At first, I decided I would unpack one box. I thought that was doable. That sounded simple until I chose a box with tax and medical documents. Suddenly, I had to review papers, decide what to keep, decide what to shred, and make hundreds of tiny decisions. And it was honestly just too much. But instead of quitting or letting that one difficult box delay me for another 7 years, I adjusted the habit. Rather than measuring the task by the box, I measured it by time. I set a timer for 15 minutes, and this is what I would do. I would open a box, and if it required too much decision making, I closed it. I gave myself permission to choose an easier box, and then I unpacked for just 15 minutes. The important part wasn't how much I finished, because often I didn't even finish the box I started within 15 minutes. The important part was that I showed up and that I started to do something toward that task or project. Now, most weekends I just spent 15 minutes unpacking. Sometimes I kept going for 30 minutes or an hour, and other times I stopped the minute the timer went off. But I still counted that as a win. I still counted that as a victory. And little by little, the boxes started disappearing. One room was finished, then another, then another. And after about 6 months, my home was completely unpacked. I didn't do it in one long, exhausting weekend. I didn't wait for some week long burst of motivation. It happened through small, consistent effort. If I had kept focusing on the ultimate goal of unpacking 3 bedrooms full of boxes, I might still be living with them today. That's the power of a micro habit. You make the starting point so small that you can actually begin. And once you begin, momentum has a chance to take over. Motivation often shows up when we start, not before. We spend so much time waiting to feel ready or motivated, when what we really need is movement, small, consistent movement. This experience changed the way I approached overwhelming tasks. Now, whenever I catch myself thinking that's too much, I don't have time, or I'll start next weekend, I stop and ask myself one question: what is the smallest version of this I can do today? Because almost always I can do something, and something beats nothing every single time. So here's what I hope you take away from today's episode. Don't measure success only by how much you accomplish. Measure it by whether you kept the habit alive. Did you take one small step? Did you show up? Were you consistent? That's where the magic happens. Your challenge this week is simple. Think of one thing you've been putting off, then shrink it again, and shrink it again until that first step feels almost silly. It's so small. Make the starting point so easy that your brain can't argue with you. Maybe it's walking for 1 minute. Maybe it's unpacking for 15 minutes. Maybe it's clearing out only one drawer, or maybe it's clearing out only half a drawer. Maybe it's making one phone call or working on a project for just 5 minutes. Do that tiny thing consistently for the next week. And you know what? If daily is too much for you, then just do it once during a weekend for the next month. Choose a rhythm that you can actually sustain, but start today. I think you'll be surprised by what happens. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow this podcast so you don't miss future episodes. I'll continue sharing simple ideas that have made my life just a little bit better and hopefully help make your life slightly better too. And remember, you don't need a perfect life. You just need a slightly better one. There are thousands of podcasts you could be listening to, so thank you so much for choosing mine today. And I truly hope you come back. Now, let's all take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. And if no one has told you lately, you matter and you are worthy. Until next time.